our next speaker will be speaking on accessibility and inclusive learning environments, and this is Cindy Marota from the Accessible Education Center. Cindy? Thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone. So, have you had a student in one of your classes or have been in an institution that offers support to students with disabilities? Anybody? Okay. We are that office. We are the Accessible Education Center. So what's very important to remember is that students with disabilities are students of the university who happen to be using the services of the Accessible Education Center. I can guarantee you, you will have a student in your class. 11% nationally, 11% of students with disabilities are attending post-secondary education. That's pretty amazing. In the day when I started in the field, we won't tell what year that was, it was 1%. That's a huge growth, a huge, huge growth. And that's because of the benefits of medicine and assistive technology. So, when you have a student in your class, let's talk about, first of all, what you're teaching, your curriculum. You're designing your curriculum. I would assume that you're probably working with your faculty member as well. So it's important when you're designing that curriculum that you think about access. And that is called Universal Design for Learning, UDL. Okay? And what that means is while UDL, back in 1997, came into being because of students with disabilities, it is actually designed to allow everyone, including yourselves when you're in that student position, to learn in a different fashion. Okay? So, we all learn, every single one of us, using 4 modalities. Obviously, our visual, our auditory, kinesthetic with movement, and tactile with touch, correct? When you're teaching, you want to present your information, try to elicit all 4 of those modalities. The more modalities that you're using, the more engaged that student is going to be and not a passive learner. What happens when we're passive learners? Kind of fall asleep, right? Kind of don't care, your mind wanders off. But you're there to educate the students so they can move on and get their degree. That's the purpose of you helping in that classroom, right? So you want to engage and use as many of those modalities when you're presenting that information. Likewise, when the student is presenting the information back to you, whether it's in a test, whether it's in the classroom in a group setting or a single answer, you want to allow them a style of format to present to you that information that works for them as well. Because trust me when I tell you, everyone in that class is going to learn better when you're using this universal design. Case in point, everybody knows what real-time captions are? Yes? Let's hear it. Let's get engaged, right? So real-time captions were created for people who were deaf or hard of hearing so that they could take that audio and see on the bottom by reading the words exactly what is going on. What is that person saying? A visual description, music is being played, etc., right? Loud noise, all of that is in the captions. Do you know how many students with English as a second language have learned by using captions? Right? Universal design. Isn't that awesome? Okay. All right. How about somebody who is visually impaired? They can see. What they can see is going to be different and unique for each one. They may be seeing shadows. They may have light sensitivity. Their character size may need to be enlarged. But if you're presenting something in a PowerPoint on the board, what's wonderful for you to do then, write larger. Have white space between your sentences, between if you're teaching math, between those equations. Don't make the information cluttered and busy looking, okay? Because what does the brain see? A lot of symbols and characters that could be overwhelming. And when it's overwhelming, what happens? It's harder to learn. And for some students, it may just be, I can't learn, and they shut down. So having that extra white space really presents this nice, easy way to read that document. And then the eyes can take in that information, process it in the means in which that student processes it, and then be able to engage in that conversation or solve that math problem or find the research answer that you're requesting, whatever that is. That makes sense? Yeah? Okay. You may have a student in your class who is blind. We have several students on campus who are blind. And you'll see them come into your classroom with a little box that looks about this big. It's called the Braille and Speak. And they'll plug in so that you don't get bothered and the class doesn't get bothered by the sound. But actually what they're doing, amazingly quickly, is typing everything that whomever is talking is saying into this machine, and it's giving them auditory feedback. So they're taking notes, they're listening to what you're putting on the board and capturing that, whatever you're doing, just it's their note-taking system. And it's awesome. And then we print it out in Braille, or they go home and it's converted into a digital file where they will use a screen reader to read that back to them. They may be doing some of these things in your classroom. You'll see them with a laptop, and that assistive technology, the screen reader called JAWS, is literally on there as a software program and reading to them. Okay? Does this make sense? All right. When you have a student who is using different means to learn, they're going to help you to be a better teacher. Trust me. I hear this all the time. And when I was doing the teaching, it was the same way. They're making you aware of how you're presenting that information, how you're allowing your students to engage with you, give you back that information, work in groups, okay? Or talk individually with you. Present your reports that you're asking for in different formats. If someone can't speak, and yet they have a sign language interpreter or a real-time captioner, wouldn't it be neat if you heard their voice as opposed to hearing that sign language interpreter's voice? Allow them to create a PowerPoint and then have assistive technology read it out for them. That makes them independent as opposed to using a service provider. Your students in the class are going to learn from that as well. It's engaging. That's using all of those modalities that I was talking about. Okay? So, at the Accessible Education Center, we're going to work with you. We're going to work with your faculty. We are your support as much as we are your student support. Okay? If you have a student in your class who has a sensory impairment, which is blind, visually impaired, deaf, or hard of hearing, you will receive notification. If the student has been registered with the Accessible Education Center for a while, we call them a returning student, you will receive an early notification. That early notification allows you to create your curriculum in the modality that they need. And what that is for the deaf and hard of hearing is if you're showing any videos, even little clips off of the web, you have to have them captioned. You must have them captioned, okay? Especially if you're testing them on the information. That's really important. Okay. There's a program on campus that will work with you to provide that captioning. So the importance of me being here and talking with you today is that captioning takes a little bit of time, just like brailing, and so you can't just send your request to caption a video clip or a movie, which is longer, and expect it by the end of the day or the next day. It really depends on the length of that video clip, that movie, whatever it is, and how clear and easy it is in terms to put the captioning in, because we're literally producing that here on campus. So make sure to be proactive and think what you're doing. If in the event you find something on the internet in the morning, which happens, and you're a really great teacher and you say, I want to show that today in class because it is relevant to what's happening, If it's short, and you can create a transcript real quick for that student and hand it to them while you're talking about it, that's fine too. But again, depending on the length and depending if you're testing that student on that information, you must provide it to them in the medium in which they need. Okay? Someone who is blind. Not every student who is blind reads Braille. Okay? Years ago when assistive technology came out, the K through 12 system stopped teaching Braille because assistive technology was the end-all be-all. Now there's this different type of independence. Guess when they found that assistive technology wasn't the everything? California had a lot of brownouts in the day. And what happens in a brownout? No electricity. What happens when assistive technology doesn't have electricity? You can't use it. So that student then is unable to move forward and learn that information or take that test in the modality that they need to, right? In that format. So the schools now, the K through 12 system, have been for some years teaching Braille again. So please don't assume that every student who is blind knows how to read Braille. If they are using Braille and that is their requested format, especially to take your test or for your handouts in class or for your textbooks, we, the AEC, will convert that print material into the appropriate Braille format right here on campus, across the hall in our alternative media center. So we produce literary Braille, Nemeth Braille, which is for math classes, and music Braille. We were the first CSU to produce music Braille. You will know that if we need to use your, you will be given information if we need to get your information to produce it in Braille, which means we have to have it early, a minimum of 5 days prior to you giving it to the class. Okay? It takes quite a while to produce Braille. If your student who is blind is not using Braille, then we will be taking your print material, including the textbooks, and converting it into a what they call OCR. So it can be read with a either a screen reader or a assistive reading tool. It really depends on the student. All those decisions are made in the AEC, so you do not have to worry about that. So that again takes time, and we will need your information a minimum of 5 days in advance. Okay? All of this assistive technology will be used for their test taking as well. If you have a student who is deaf or hard of hearing, again, you will receive information as soon as possible. Sometimes our students who are deaf or hard of hearing and blind and visually impaired, they don't register with us until school begins. And then you're going, oh, I just learned about this now, because we just learned about it now. So we try our very, very best to get to you as soon as possible and your faculty member. Now, if you're working with if you have a student in your class who is deaf and is using a sign language interpreter, okay, I ask for you, please, not to tell that interpreter where to stand. They need to position themselves in the line of sight that meets the need of the student that is receiving the effective communication, okay? So please, if you're a pacer and you say, no, I need you to stand over here, that's not acceptable. They will position themselves based on where you are and based on where that student is sitting. Please do not walk in front of a sign language interpreter. What happens when you do that? You're cutting off that effective communication. When we cut off that effective communication, that student is not hearing what you are teaching. When they're not hearing it and they're being tested on it, their grade is going to suffer. When their grade suffers, guess what happens? They're going to come and they're going to complain. And they have a right. That's why we do this early preparation to inform you, okay? For a student who doesn't know sign language or does not use sign language and is deaf or hard of hearing, we also use educational real-time captioners. Does anyone know what that is? You ever heard that term before? Yes, perfect. You want to go? Okay. pretty close. They're not a typist. They are trained court reporters, which is different, but they look like they're sitting there just kind of plunking away at the keys. They're trained court reporters. Everybody knows what a court reporter is for a judge, who has actually gone the pathway of education. And so they will sit, again, they will position themselves in the classroom where they need to. Typically, that's going to be by the closest plug in the wall, because they're going to plug in their machine and they're going to set it up. They'll get to class a little early to do that. Your student is going to sit wherever they want in that classroom, because they're going to have a little iPad mini, and you will know, not only by your notification, but by the orange or lime green cover of that, which we have done strategically, okay? They will be using that mean of communication because wirelessly, the captioner is sending them everything that you're saying in real time, which is awesome. It allows them to be part of the classroom, right? Part of the engagement of learning, not sitting like in the old days off to the side in the corner by the plug with the interpreter, or excuse me, the captioner right there. They are now part of the class, so they can be part of the group work. They can be part of whatever it is you're asking the class to do with their iPad. Again, for both populations, deaf and hard of hearing and the deaf, please only allow one person to speak at a time in the class. If people are talking over, the interpreter and the real-time captioner cannot communicate effectively. Again, it's tied to the grade. But what's so wonderful about universal design? If everyone is hearing one person talk at a time, what does that do? That allows everyone to take in that information in the way they take it in and process it much clearer. You see how that's helping everyone. If you have students who are actively engaged and they're excited about their learning, they start talking over each other, that's good. That's wonderful. However, don't call out, you need to stop talking because remember we have a captioner in the room, one person at a time. That's a negative. That puts it on the shoulders of that student, right? Nobody wants to be called out for something. So what you can say, class, remember, I ask everyone only talk one person at a time so we all can hear what you're saying, right? How benign and easy is that? Okay, all right. If you have a student who is receiving accommodations, here's going to be the little trick. You are not the instructor of record. The instructor of record will be receiving that information that there is a student in the course receiving accommodations, because everything we do in the AEC is connected to CMS. So it's directly fed. We have all the instructor information for that student. So it's important that you communicate with your faculty member that you're working with to find out if you have a student, because you are responsible, if you're the TA teaching that class, then to provide those accommodations, okay? So make sure you talk with that faculty member. They will receive an email from the AEC with the student's name, informing them of what those accommodations are. Never the disability, okay, because that's confidential information. Please do not ask the student that information. So all of that information will be received by the faculty member. We will be pushing that out today. So those will all go out today as faculty are now back on campus. Then the student, throughout the semester, has their prescribed accommodations. Those accommodations that they want to use for the courses that they're in, a single course, one course, or all of their courses, will decide, and they will send the information to the professor via you directly. And you will get notification of that, whatever that accommodation is, okay? If you ever have questions, please don't hesitate to call us. We are here to support you as well, to answer those questions. It's a partnership. It's a team effort, right, to educate students. All of us work here on campus together to do that. Okay? So, test accommodations is a large accommodation used widely by, I would say, the vast majority of our students. You will receive the information from a student telling you that they're going to be taking their test with AEC. It will say the date of the test, the time of the test, and then, of course, tell you the location of our testing room, which is Industrial Studies, IS 223. They will go there, not to your classroom, to take the test. Why? Because we have everything there that they need, from the environment, quiet, distraction reduced, to lighting, different types of lighting, different types of air, temperatures, furniture, space, assistive technology that we train them on here, one-on-one, in our Center for Accessible Technology, train them so they can access the curriculum you're requiring all of your class to learn, because students with disabilities are required to learn that as well. They're not exempt. They may just have to learn it a little differently and demonstrate their knowledge in a different way. That's why we're talking about alternative formats and such. Okay? So they'll come and they'll let you know that they are taking the test. When you receive that, or your faculty member receives that, the next step is for you to upload your test and send it to us. Okay? So we do everything via email. We have all signed releases. And that expedites everything. It allows you to remember to send us the test at 1 o'clock in the morning when you finished writing it. So we will have it at 9 a.m. Our testing center is open from 9 in the morning till 10 at night. So the students have quite a lot of hours in which to take their test. Here's the key. As you know, many of our students are carrying 15 units, right? 12 to 15 units. So what does that mean? Back-to-back classes. They're running from one class to another, which means if you're having a test that day in your class and the student is using extended time as an accommodation and they have to get to the next class, they cannot miss the next class to take your test. You cannot require them that. So they will schedule the test at a different time in that block of the day that they have free to take that exam. We tell the students they need to take that test as close to the class time as possible and on that day. This is not an allowance to study more a few extra days, or I have no babysitter, I have to go home. No, that's not what test accommodations are for. You do have a right to ask that student, the class is taking it at 10 in the morning. Why are you taking it 2 in the afternoon? And if they say to you, well, I have a class, back to back, that's my first opening, you can also confirm that with us because we have their study schedules, okay? But I will tell you, all the years I've been doing this, the majority of students are very, very honest. They want to earn that degree. They want to move forward just like yourselves, okay? But you're always willing to ask us any questions that you may need. If a student approaches you and says, I need accommodations, and you can't tell that they need accommodations because it's not evident, here's what I want you to say to them. Thank you for informing me that you need the accommodations. As soon as I receive the information from the AEC, I will be happy to accommodate you. Why are you saying that statement instead of saying, nope, I don't know, or sure? Because, one, you don't know if they really need that accommodation. Do they have a disabling condition that impacts their learning and their abilities to test? Okay, that's what AEC does, determines the eligibility. Not every student with disabilities is eligible for accommodations. 2, you're not denying the accommodation because you don't know if they need it. 3, you're not giving them the accommodation, which puts you in the legal term regarded as, now you've given somebody an accommodation who may not need it, legal precedent, we have to continue that through the tenure of their university, no matter what faculty member. That gets nasty. And the next thing 4, you're giving them the referral notice on how to get that accommodation. And there's also the syllabus statement. Is everybody good on that? Okay. Any quick questions? Yes.
If there's a student who says that they do need accommodations, but they do not know where to get them at, is there a direct link on the website where we can send them?
It's actually in your syllabus statement too.
Okay.
And there is a direct link and it says Accessible Education Center. You're going to see an ADA statement and it tells them to talk with the faculty member, which is you as well, and let them know that they need accommodations, or If they don't even know what that is because they're newly diagnosed and they come up and tell you, I'm having trouble, my back is hurting, I was in a car accident, that's a trigger to refer them to us.
Okay.
Good question.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Welcome. Have a wonderful semester. Don't forget to call us if you need us. Take care.
Thank you, Cindy.